Hello, Sourdough Mamas. Sorry, I'm running a little bit behind today. Hopefully you guys can all join okay. I am Heather. I am the owner of Leavenly.com and the founder of the Sourdough Mamas movement. And this Sourdough Mamas Live is episode 3. We're going to be talking all about Bannetons. So I was a few minutes late. We're going to give folks a few minutes to join in and let them tune in. I'm going to grab a quick drink of water because I've been running around like crazy. Awesome. So welcome. If this is your very first time at Sourdough Mamas Live, let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you because I know we have a whole bunch of brand new members. And welcome to the Sourdough Mamas group, first of all, and also welcome to Sourdough Mamas Live. So Sourdough Mamas Live is all about information that you guys find helpful. So in this case, looking for things to talk about, questions, concerns that you guys have around Bannetons. I put that question out to the group and I got so much in response. It was amazing. So I was preparing for this live. I was originally going to do Bannetons and proofing, and I got so many questions, and I found so much information that I actually ended up splitting them into 2 different episodes. So in 2 weeks' time, I'm going to be doing the proofing fermentation episode. And this one is just all about Bannetons. If you can believe it, we're going to talk just about bread baskets. But there's a lot of information and people have a lot of questions. So, hey, Dan. Hey, Layla. She's new. Thank you and welcome. Thanks for being here. Awesome. So real quick, just Sourdough Mamas Live is this bi-weekly video series that you guys can sort of curate. You can send me ideas for these videos. And I will also reach out to you guys from time to time saying, hey, I'm going to do my video on this. Do you guys have any issues around that? What questions do you have? And then so this is kind of, you curated this content. So also, we're going to be covering topics, issues, and questions that matter to you guys. So always send in your questions. You can send in your Banneton questions right now if you're kind of sitting on one and you want to ask one. And I think that's all I had to say about Sourdough Mamas Live. Again, I'm Heather. I'm the owner of Leavenly.com and the founder of the Sourdough Mamas community here on Facebook. So this is a Facebook Live video. If you're watching in the future on YouTube, you can leave me questions in the comments below as well, and I will answer those as well. So we are talking about Bannetons. Let me show you what I mean by a Banneton. So this is a Banneton. They have many names though. So some people will call this a Breadware. That's the German name. Some people call it a Banneton, and some people call it a proofing basket. Everything is correct, just different origins of the word. These Breadware ones typically are made of like cane or wood in a spiral pattern. They're German. The rattan baskets, I actually don't have any, but they are typically more like a Banneton classically. They usually have a liner, whereas with the Breadware, you can use it without a liner. And so when I say the word Banneton in this whole video, I'm going to just be talking about every kind of proofing basket. So I'm going to grab real quick my plastic ones. When I first started out, I started using these plastic proofing baskets, and they're fine. I just didn't love them, and I ended up getting a whole bunch of the Breadware type because I really love those ones. But the plastic ones were cheap. They're a really great way to start out. These were the ones I got first, and then, so I've had these for a long time. These ones were the ones I got second. They're like black ones. I actually got these from a sourdough workshop I took here in Denver from Raleigh Street Bakery. So that's where I got those ones, and I hang on to them kind of just for memory's sake. I don't really use them anymore. Put those here. So hi everybody, hi from Texas. Do you recommend any certain Banneton? If I had to recommend one, I would recommend this 8-inch Breadware type. I absolutely love this. The ones I got, I can put a link down below as well. I'm gonna make myself a note. Because I always say I'm going to do things in videos and then I don't end up doing it because I forget what I said I was going to do. So I'll put a link to this one, but it comes with a liner with an elastic. So it actually fits in really snugly like this. It has the elastic around the edge and it just sits inside. It fits perfectly and there's no wrinkles. So that's what I love about that. So Bannetons typically range from about $15 to $40. So there's a downside of them is their cost, especially because they are a very specialized item. I mean, with the plastic ones, sometimes what I'll do is if I have an excess of fruit or something or vegetables harvested from the garden, I'll use these as fruit baskets. But I don't use my wood ones for that, just because I wouldn't want to ruin them, have them stained by leaking fruit or anything like that. I really hope my brother-in-law is watching, because he did this to one of my Bannetons. Jace, he left it on the stove, he turned the element on, he didn't realize he turned the wrong element on. It's obviously fine, but so that's kind of a running joke between us. And these are my oval Bannetons, by the way, and we'll get to those in a second. Like I said, there's different names for them and the terms are interchangeable. So if I say proving baskets, you might say Banneton, the other person might say a brought form. They're all kind of the same. You could get into the nitty gritty and say, well, no, they're not really the same. They're different, made of different materials. They have different origins, but you know, for all intents and purposes, they're interchangeable. So let's just keep it simple. So let's see. One of you guys asked me what, just to go over the advantages of using a Banneton. So you will get a consistent size and shape of your bread. I actually have some bread here that I just pulled out of the fridge that's proofing. I'm going to bake tomorrow. But so your bread is always going to be the same size, as long as your dough is roughly the same weight. I don't weigh mine, but I just kind of eyeball it at this point. But as long as it's about the same size and you're using the same Bannetons, then it's going to be the same shape and the same size bread. Also, like I said earlier, they come with, some of them come with a fitted liner, so you're not going to be dealing with the wrinkles that you might get from using a tea towel, which is a plus. And the natural cane material, as well as the flour and the linen fabric, absorb the moisture that's on the surface of the dough. So it makes kind of a really thin skin around your dough, and that's actually really advantageous because when you flip it out the next day, it holds its shape a bit better, you can score it a lot easier, and it makes a nice crust too. So there's 3 good reasons why you should use a Banneton, just for that better bread overall. But you don't need to, and we're going to talk about substitutions too, like what you can use instead of, you know, a costly Banneton, something that you might already have in your home. So we're going to get to that point here in a minute. The plastic baskets don't offer that advantage of absorbing the moisture, so you would never put the dough directly in here. You would need to line it. So I will show you guys how to do that in just a few minutes. And you get a really pretty spiral pattern. I really wish that I could have had a bowl to show you with the spiral on the top from the inside of the Banneton. I'm sure you've all seen pictures of them though, and all that is just you dust it with the rice flour, put your dough in it, and then when you flip it out, it's still got the rice flour in this spiral pattern on top. So it's really, really pretty. So that's an advantage as well. Obviously the downside is that they're a little bit pricey, especially if they're just a one-use item. And so how do you get the lines? Someone to ask me, that's exactly how you get the lines. You just dust your basket, put the dough in it, proof it, and then when you flip it out, you're going to have those spiral lines, and they're really pretty. The downside of the lines is if you want to do some really pretty scoring, some decorative scoring, then you're not going to want those lines on your dough. You're going to want to use the liner, because this will give you a smooth top crust on your dough, and then you can score it however you like. You can do flower patterns or score it really pretty, because it's just going to be a nice uniform flat dough. So I'm just going to check some questions real quick. How do you season it so you don't need to use the liner? I quickly touched on that, but I can elaborate a little bit more, Amy. So what I do is I open up my rice flour. I keep it just in a mason jar. And because I actually don't really need it anymore. My Bannetons are pretty well seasoned by now, but I just basically will sprinkle a little bit inside. And then I kind of, I hope you can see this, I kind of shake it around and twist it. And then it fills, oops, I'm spilling it everywhere. And then it fills in all those lines just like that. You don't want too much, but you want to over flour and not under flour your Banneton. So that's how you would get it ready for your dough. Then afterwards, you're not going to rinse it out. You're not going to wash it with soap and water. We're going to touch on how to clean them afterwards too, but you're basically not going to clean it. And the flour is going to accumulate in those crevices, and then eventually you're not even going to need to dust anymore. Or maybe just a light coating of flour. We'll talk about types of flours as well in just a minute. So real quick, actually we can touch on flour now just because we're on the same kind of tangent. I have white rice flour. I've heard really great things about brown rice flour. I just haven't had an opportunity to use it myself yet because I got a huge bag of white rice flour and this is all I have left. So when this runs out, I'm going to try brown rice flour, but rice flour is better for dusting your Bannetons just simply because it's more, what's a good word? It's less like gelatinous almost when it absorbs the moisture. So if you dust with regular AP flour, like from your shaker, it's going to kind of get a little bit gummy. It's not going to absorb as much moisture. So it will stick more to your Banneton than if you use rice flour. Rice flour just releases a whole lot better. And some people swear by dusting the top of their dough with rice flour before they score it as well. It just makes it more vivid. I tend to use all-purpose flour just because I have it handy, but some people just absolutely swear by that. So that's another advantage to rice flour as well. So definitely if you don't have any, I think I got mine from Whole Foods, Bob's Red Mill brand. And it's not, nothing fancy. It wasn't crazy expensive and it lasts forever because you just use a little sprinkle. So that is flours. I'm going to take a quick look, see if we have any more questions. Someone from London, hi. Layla said, I find that no matter how much I flour my proofing basket, my dough winds up sticking to the fabric. So that's a good point. If you are just using the fabric on the inside of your Banneton, you're going to want to flour that just the same as you do the inside of your Banneton. And after a while, I'm not sure if you can see, I'll try to pull this out, but I haven't cleaned this ever. I don't know if you can really tell, but it's got kind of, if you look really closely in the weave of the pattern, you can see it's got caked in flour, and that's perfectly fine. The key is that you want it to dry, but it doesn't need to be completely cleaned. So I keep kind of switching back and forth between my topics, but we're going to talk about how to clean them, or if you'd like to clean them. Veronique said, I'm really struggling with the dough not keeping its shape when I tip it out. I've been trying quite hard with the shaping stage and putting in as much surface tension as possible, but with high hydration, the dough just starts spreading when I take it out to score. That, I think we can all be like, yeah, I've been there, 100%, I've been there. We all have struggled with that. So you're not alone, first of all, just know that. It sounds like, to me, that your dough is a high hydration, like you said, maybe too high of a hydration, because when dough is higher hydration, it ferments faster, right? So dough ferments faster in the presence of more water. So the higher hydration you have, the faster it's going to ferment, and the more risk there is to over-fermenting that dough. So you may have a nice looking dough ball in your Banneton like this, and you're all excited, then you go to dump it out and it spreads out like a pancake. That is classic over-fermentation. So you're going to want to make small adjustments to your process. Maybe reducing your bulk fermentation time by an hour or more. Or you could reduce your hydration. I like a 75%. Some people like 85% kind of as a challenge, or they like that open crumb, but it's hard to work with. And I actually personally don't even like working with that high of a hydration. So maybe lower your hydration, reduce your bulk fermentation time, and that should help. I'm going to talk at length about that specific issue in 2 weeks' time in Sourdough Mamas 4. But I just wanted to answer that question because it is super common. But again, that's the whole message behind Leavenly, is just adjusting your process to fit your kitchen, your ingredients, and your life, right? So your kitchen, by that I mean your climate. Is it hot or is it humid? Are you at altitude? I live at altitude, and I had to make an entirely separate sourdough recipe for people at high altitude because it's a struggle. Fermentation happens faster up here than it does at sea level. I mean, who knew? It took me years to figure that out. and you know, your ingredients. So you might be using a different type of flour than I am. Your water might be different. You might be using inclusions, and also your life, right? So your schedule, things that you have going on. You might need to proof your bread for up to 40 hours in the fridge, and that's okay. You know, I might do it 18 hours, you might do it 40 hours. It's totally cool. Again, this whole process is very, very customizable. Kind of went on a tangent there, but that's what the whole message of Leavenly is about. I don't want you guys ever to be intimidated by sourdough, because it's not intimidating. It's actually very easy and very forgiving. Starting a starter can be tricky. It definitely can, I'll give you that. But the rest of it, it all kind of just works itself out eventually, especially if you just keep trying, okay? So stick with it. Let's talk about substitutions, okay? So what can you use instead of Bannetons? Basically anything that you have in your kitchen that's a bowl shape. So you can use like a mixing bowl, okay? I'm gonna show you how to do a liner with this too. You could use a mixing bowl, you could use the inside of a salad spinner. I've heard people doing this. The nice thing with doing this is that the airflow gets underneath and all around the dough in the fridge, just like Banneton allows, right? So these aren't super tightly coiled. They're not like airtight. Air flows in and out of this freely, so it would with this too. So that's a great idea. You could just use, you know, a soup bowl, a regular cereal bowl, or what I've also heard people doing is using a colander with the liner. Do not ever use any of these things, by the way, without a liner. That's your word of caution. And I'll show you how to do that liner in just 1 second. Thank you for the high altitude recipe, Dave said. You're welcome. I hope you guys, I love hearing from people that would use the high altitude recipe and it works for them, because it literally was years of struggle for me to figure out, like, what the heck is going on? Why isn't this working? I used to live in San Francisco and it worked beautifully there, and then I moved to Denver and nothing is working, and I had pancake dough and nothing was rising. It was so frustrating. So I'm really glad it's helpful for people. I mean, that's my whole goal here. So I want to show you real quick how to line your bowl. So I'm going to use the colander as my example, and I'm going to try to tip this down. Let's see if that'll work. Bear with me if it doesn't. All right, let's try to tip you down. Yeah, that seems to work. Okay, so here is your colander, and you're going to come, here's what I want to show you. I'll show you what not to do first. Don't ever use a towel like this, okay? I think this is the exact towel I used the very first time I lined a bowl to use it before I had a Banneton, and the dough stuck to every little ridge, and it was such a disaster. And my dough, I think I baked my dough anyway, and we ate it, but it looked terrible because the crust was all ripped. So don't use textured towels like this. Learn from my mistakes. What you want to use is a nice flat linen like this. I got these from Sur La Table years ago. I got a couple. They're just flat linen cotton tea towels. They're really big too, which I like. Or you can use cut squares of actual linen. So I got this from the sourdough workshop that I did here at Raleigh Street Bakery. He gave me these as well as those plastic Bannetons I showed you earlier. So these also work. They're like roughly 8 or 9 inches square, and you would just kind of place it in there and put your dough inside. But what I want to show you is a trick that I saw, and I thought it was really neat, because my first inclination when I would do this was to put it across and push it down, and right, look at all the wrinkles, and I'm so kind of OCD, I'd be kind of smoothing them out and trying to make it flat. So don't do that. Here's what's easier. Just lay it flat like this. Then you're going to get your rice flour and dust it across the whole thing, and you're going to want to use a lot, okay? I'm just going to use a little because I don't want to waste it, but you guys will probably use more than that. Okay, and it's flat across, and then you're going to, this bowl is going to simulate my dough. I'm sorry I don't have any to show you, but you're going to come along with your dough, pick it up from the counter, and gently place it in like this. Boom. See, it makes the divot for you, so you're not just, you know, and also dusting the surface is much easier. You're dusting a flat surface as opposed to trying to turn it and the towel's falling all over the place. So that's a really great tip that I saw once, so I wanted to share that with you guys. So that's how you would line any of these substitute Bannetons. Okay, you're going to want to use a flat weave cloth or linen. You're going to use rice flour, and you're just going to do it flat across. And don't do it the way that I used to do it. Dave said, I learned the towel problem the hard way. Yeah, you only make that mistake one time. You will never make that mistake again. Let me see a couple questions first. I'm going to have a quick drink of water too. Jill said, yes, I have a double batch coming up tomorrow and the colander is up to bat. That's perfect. Because also, yeah, the colander is huge. I'm going to touch on real quick how much dough each Banneton can handle. But colander, you could put a ton of dough in there. I think the general rule of thumb is to make sure that it has enough space to double. I touched on this the last episode, but you don't really necessarily want your sourdough to double. So don't get that verbiage stuck in your head. But you want space for it to, in case it does, so it doesn't spill over the edges. Okay, so we don't want sourdough to rise like typical yeasted bread does. It might, and if it does, great, but we don't really want it to. It doesn't need to. Let me see. Lisa said the high altitude recipe is the only one I use in Utah. That's great, Lisa. Thank you. And perfect. Do you have to make a larger batch for the size of the Banneton, said Irene. So I think what you mean is to make it fit in the Banneton. Like if, okay, I just got it. I just understood. So, because this is bigger, right? This is a larger volume. Trying to show you the colander under this towel. This is they're going to hold a larger volume, obviously, than this small Banneton. You don't need to make a gigantic loaf. For that. No, you could use the same amount of dough in a substitute bowl. If you can find something that has like higher edges, like I have two colanders and my other one is more, I don't know, spreads outward. And this metal one kind of goes more upward. So if you have the option, pick the one that surrounds your dough the best. And then the towel will help support that dough as it's proofing as well. So no, you don't need to reduce the amount or increase the amount of dough that you're making just to fit in the container at all. That was a really good question. Let me see. And Caroline gave some great advice. She said, I've found the easiest way of getting dough out of cloth is with cold water. Hot water cooks it a little and makes it really sticky. I've heard the same thing, Caroline, when you're actually washing your sourdough bowl, to wash it with cold water and soap instead of hot water and soap, because it makes it sticky and gummy. So that stands to reason. So thank you for sending that over. Another thing I wanted to try to pick up, and I forgot to grab it, but I wanted to show you guys one thing, is because obviously these are all circular, right? They're going to make a boule. A circular loaf is called a boule, and a circular Banneton makes a boule. An oval Banneton, I'm going to show you the one that's not burned on the bottom. An oval Banneton is going to give you a batard. So that's the difference. And so what can you substitute to give you a batard? The only real great thing I found when I was doing some research are, you know, those plastic French fry baskets, like the red plastic ones from like the dollar store or somewhere. Those would probably work great. You might need to reduce the amount of dough in them. And make sure again that it has room to double if it needs to. It's not going to spill over. But that would work great if you want that oval shape. Otherwise, I think unfortunately you're going to need some kind of basket that is an oval shape or an oval Banneton. Kimberly said, how do you get the dough out of the Banneton? So I'm not going to show you this one because it's not ready. But so here's what it would look like, right? When you're on bake day, you have your oven all preheated, your baking vessel's in the oven. Then you're going to get your square of parchment. I cut out a square of parchment paper and I place it on top of the bread. And then I put my hand on it. And now we're going to switch and pretend this is the same Banneton. Put your hand on it and then flip it over. Gently peel it up. Really gently, and then it's on your hand. That's what I like to do. Some people like to just kind of put like a cutting board or something firm, or even just go for it and dump it onto their surface. But I don't like doing that because it's a little risky, because you might kind of shock the dough in a sense and maybe degas it. It might go a little bit flat. So I like to gently coax it out, and then you have it sitting in your hand, and then, you know, the parchment paper's on top and then the dough, and then you gently place it down on your surface to score it. That's how I get mine out of the Banneton. Liner or no liner, it's the same process. Good questions, guys. Thank you for sending those over. So what size and shape of Banneton should you get? It kind of depends on your preference. So like I said, this will make a boule and this will make a batard. So it really depends on what you want to make. So this one is 8 inches. Okay, these are the ones I use, are the 8-inch round Bannetons, and they hold about 500 grams of dough, or at least they're supposed to. You know, you could go a little bit over, but like I said, I don't really weigh mine. I just kind of eyeball it. So, but that's the max that should hold. The 8-inch oval as well can hold 500 grams. So this is 8 inches. This is 8 inches. They both hold 500 grams. There's a 10-inch. I'm sorry, my oval one is 10 inches. I was just looking, I'm like, these are not both 8 inches. This 10-inch oval Banneton can hold up to 750 grams of dough. And then a 10-inch round can hold up to 1,000 grams of dough. So those are the numbers of how much they can hold. But again, the rule of thumb is just to make sure that it's roughly has like twice as much space in the Banneton as your dough takes up. Susie said, how do you safely put dough in a flaming hot Dutch oven? That's where the parchment comes in handy. So you're going to, after I score it, I lift it up by the parchment paper, and then or here's a safer way. Forget that. That's what I do, but don't do what I do. Put the parchment paper on a small cutting board, like this one, something like this. And then you're gonna have your dough on there with the parchment underneath. Carry this over to the Dutch oven and then slide it off the cutting board, pulling it by the parchment paper and slide it in. And then if you need to make any adjustments, if for some reason it's not centered or if it's kind of going over the edge, put your oven mitts on, for the love of God, please, because that is 500 degrees and it's gonna hurt if you touch it. Or you could use silicone tipped tongs if you wanted to grab that parchment. But again, you're going to want to work quickly but safely, because you're not going to want to lose all that heat from your oven. So that's my safest way. What I do now is, just because I've done it a billion times, is I just pick up the parchment paper, and my counter's really close to my oven, so I just turn and drop it in. But that's the less safe way. So you can choose which way you want to use. Can I use? Oh yeah. So Kathy had a really great question. When I was kind of polling you guys and seeing what you thought, what your issues were, what your challenges lied, she said, can I use any basket that is well floured as a proofing basket, or should it be made of a specific material? I have some baskets with great designs that I'd like to try, but I don't want to ruin a loaf. So that's a really great question. I would be more concerned that you might ruin your baskets. If you have really nice baskets with a nice design on them and you want to imprint that on the dough, the baskets are going to get full of flour, just like I showed you, right? In all the crevices, it's going to be full of flour, just like this. You may not ever be able to get it clean, so that's the risk, I guess, of using a different basket. And also, I don't want to say like a hard yes, I would say maybe, because it depends on the material that your basket's made out of. So if it's made of cane, rattan, wood, anything like that, it's probably safe. You wouldn't want to use any like painted wicker or anything like that. And usually when people use baskets that aren't classic Bannetons, they use them with a liner. Okay, so you could try. I probably wouldn't, but if you were feeling ambitious and you don't really care much about your baskets, then you could try and just see what happens. So that's my advice on that. Yeah, getting burns from your Dutch oven is called a sourdough tattoo. That's nice. Luckily, I don't have a sourdough tattoo yet, but Dave said he just got a nice one yesterday. Sorry, Dave, that must have hurt. Let's see, dusting flowers. I think we talked about that. If you guys have any questions about flowers, let me know. But like I said, you want to kind of go overboard. Use more flour than you think you need, right? Because if it sticks to that Banneton or the liner and it rips the outer crust, it'll be fine. You can bake it, it'll be edible, but it's going to affect the final appearance of it. So just use a ton of flour, and then once you tip it out, you can brush off the excess flour before you put it in the oven if you want, or you can just smooth it around nicely and put it in as is. And then finally, cleaning a Banneton and a liner. So here's my advice on how to clean a Banneton and a liner. Don't clean them because you want them seasoned. It's just like if I asked you to clean my cast iron combo cooker with soap and water, you'd be like, oh God, no, never. You don't want to wash these either. The only reason you might is if you might see some mold in it, kind of black spots that might indicate some mold. But what you could do is just dry it, wash it in water, and then lay it out in the sun to dry. And that should eliminate that. All I do after I pull my dough out is it's usually like this, right? Because your dough sticks to your liner as it's peeling off, and then it's inverted, and I just leave it like this. I sit it on my counter until it's dry, because when you touch that after the dough's in it, it's going to feel kind of damp from absorbing the water from the dough. So just leave it, and it'll dry just like that. And mine's kind of like it's flexible, but it's a little bit crunchy feeling because it's really well seasoned. I could put dough right in there. I wouldn't even have to flour this because I've used it so many times. So I don't wash the liners. If there's chunks, obviously of like big chunks of dough or something, once it's dry, I'll put this over the sink and I'll kind of rub my hand over it and get all the big chunks out into the sink. And ditto if I'm using a bare Banneton, I'll do the same thing. But never ever with soap and water. Rarely would I rinse the liner in water. I just don't. Just let them air dry. They have to be really well dried. That's the key. And yeah, just keep the flour in there so it stays seasoned. I think that's all I had. I'm going to check some questions. Again, Kimberly said, I didn't go overboard. I ripped the bread and now the dough is stuck in the basket now. Oh, I'm sorry. Did you bake it? Were you able to bake it at least? And was it delicious? Because that's the kind of the good thing about sourdoughs. Even if there's kind of a downside, like it tears or it gets stuck, you could still bake it and it's still going to be delicious, right? It's just, it might not look exactly how you wanted it to look. Let's see. Time to experiment. Yeah, I'm all for experimenting with sourdough. Caroline said, can you please tell me why rice flour is the best for dusting the Banneton? I touched on this earlier, so I'll just answer you super quickly, but the rice flour turns out to be a little less gelatinous as it absorbs the water from the dough. So it releases from the Banneton better, and it's more, I keep struggling with this word. It releases better from the Banneton is basically the takeaway here. And afterwards too, the top of your dough is going to be dusted with rice flour, which people really like. They like to dust the top with rice flour because it's really vivid and it shows up with scoring. Let's see, any more questions? Dan said, have you ever put a Banneton in the freezer with the dough while the oven is heating up just for an hour before scoring? I've heard of that before, Dan. I heard that people will do that to help with scoring. I've never done it, but that's not to say that you can't do it and it might help with your scoring. What I typically do is I will pull my dough, like my oven will be screaming hot, my Dutch oven is in there, screaming hot, and I pull my dough from the oven, dump it out, pull my dough from the fridge, dump it out, score it, and put it right in. So I score it and I put it in the oven cold. And I find that helps with scoring as well. I've never tried the freezer trick. I don't know if someone here has, if anyone can offer any feedback, but I've heard of that when people do proofing at room temperature versus doing cold proofing overnight. So it's just something to keep in mind. Nice question. Let's see. Is there a brand or place to get your Banneton that you recommend? Bonnie asked. So I would recommend getting Bannetons from Challenger Breadware. They have started stocking a whole bunch of stuff. So they obviously make the Challenger bread pan, which if you haven't heard of it, I would go grab mine, but it's so heavy. It's right there, but it's heavy, and I have nowhere to put it right here. It's a beautiful cast iron pan, and you can get that at Challenger Breadware, but they also sell a whole bunch of other stuff now. They sell bench knives, they sell oven gloves, which I actually want to get, so they're actually like gloves, so you have more dexterity. So that would be great for avoiding burns if you're adjusting with your parchment paper, right? You're not wearing huge oven mitts. That's on my wish list from them for sure. They also sell Bannetons, so they sell both types of Bannetons on the Challenger Breadware website. So you could just Google that, and I'll put links down below as well to that. Let me make a note to myself. And that's where I would recommend getting them. Of course, you can get them from Amazon. I actually got all mine from Amazon because it was before I knew about Challenger Breadware, and I've had them for years. The risk is, that the type of Bannetons that I get, I lucked out, and they were all really nice and seemed like nicely made. There's some quality of workmanship issues, maybe like, I don't know if you can see that. There's kind of like some threads not finished great on the inside of the liner. So that's kind of the risk you take by getting them on Amazon, right? You might get a great one and love it, and you might get one that's just kind of janky, or it's got splinters, or something is just not quite right. So that's why I would recommend getting them from Challenger. Kimberly said she got the gloves and the bowl covers. Yes, the bowl covers. So they actually, I'm going on a tangent, but they just made, I don't know if you noticed, but when I took my dough out of the fridge, right, I had a plastic shower cap guy on. I'm putting it back on to show you. Like this, right? It just goes over and it goes around the bowl, and I love them because they're elastic, but they're plastic, and they're not supposed to be reusable, but I reuse mine as many times as I can, and then I have to throw them away. Jim Challenger has started supplying ones that are biodegradable. So he's got bowl covers that are biodegradable. It's the exact same thing, but when you throw them away, you can kind of rest easy that you're not putting more plastic into the landfills. So thank you for pointing that out, Kimberly. How are the bowl covers? Let me know. Dave said I should probably get some gloves to prevent more tattoos. Yes, you should. I think we should all get a pair of those gloves. They're probably awesome. Let's see. Oh, Dave said he's bought mine on Amazon and locally too. Yeah, so probably like a kitchen supply or like a small mom and pop kind of kitchen store would have them too. You may want to call ahead and find out if they carry them to save yourself some time running around, but that's a good idea too. Denise said, doesn't your bowl or basket have to be a certain size so it fits in your baking container? That's a good point. Thank you. That's a good point I didn't consider. You're going to want to make sure, I'm looking down because my combo cooker's right here. Let me grab it. So this is my Lodge cast iron combo cooker that I used to do my sourdough in all the time. So you would want it to, right, be small. Using this colander in it to proof would be fine because it would be smaller than the inside of this. Using the salad spinner might be a little bit risky because, right, I mean, it might spread out, it might be a little too big. Plus you have to account for expansion as the dough is baking. So definitely think about that. That's a really good point. Thanks for bringing that up, Denise. Great questions, guys. Great advice, great input and feedback. Love this. I can't believe we just talked for, how long are we at now? I don't even know. How can I see how long I've been on? I guess I can't. But we talked for this long about just bread baskets. So that's why I split up the episodes, because I was going to do Bannetons and proofing in one. And I just would have been standing here yammering on for like 2 hours about these topics. So that's pretty much all I have on Bannetons. If you guys have any last minute questions, let me know. Of course, if you're watching this later on Facebook, you can leave a comment as well. And I'll answer those there as well afterwards. And like I said in the beginning, if you're watching this replay on YouTube, I do put all the Sourdough Mamas live videos on YouTube after the fact. So if you're watching it on YouTube, leave me a comment there as well. If you have any questions or any feedback or any experience, definitely leave that there because I'll share that with everybody on the group. So it's really helpful to have that input from people who have the experience. send over any last minute questions now. In 2 weeks time, we're going to be talking about proofing, fermenting, what it means to do a room temperature proof versus a cold proof overnight, over fermenting, under fermenting, the finger poke test, so all of that. Why is my dough a pancake? Why isn't my dough rising in the oven? So all of those things that we struggle with in the beginning, so much of us just deal with those issues. So that's what we're going to be talking about in 2 weeks' time. And I will see you guys then, I guess. I want to see real quick if we have any last questions. Do you have a site for discard recipes? Yes, Lucy, I have a link that I can post. My husband just posted just now to an article that I made called The Internet's Largest List of Sourdough Discard Recipes. So it's full of discard recipes that you can use with your discard. Definitely make your way through that and let me know any feedback on them, that if you like them, if you didn't like them, what changes you made. I love to hear from you guys all the time. So that is it for me. Let me know if you guys have any last questions about Bannetons, and we will see you here next time. Thank you for tuning in.